Hey everyone, it is Mark Newstater with eXp Realty along with Jaden Bax from BRX Mortgage. It is September. That means we are back live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn to give you our monthly market recap, this time for August. Jaden, how are you?
I'm loving life. We're back to the classic Calgary real estate show, Mark and Jaden edition. Hey,
Yeah, I know, right? It's Natalie is busy. We are moving, and so she was busy running around this morning. So no Natalie today, but we'll see her again next week on our shortened version. But interesting month, right? Like interest rates dropping, not reflecting in the stats yet at all. But we'll get to that here in a second. But how are you? Anecdotally, how are you finding things since the interest rate drop? Any increase in activity?
not particularly. I'm starting to see some people come out of the woodwork, just looking at high level, kind of wanting to get things figured out, but
Yeah.
not in terms of actually locking something down.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, here's our weekly stats. This was a bit of a shocker. So I pulled these yesterday. I like to maintain most like data integrity, right? So if I pulled them today, it messes up our stats. So I did pull these. This was later in the day yesterday, but look at the new listings that hit the market by around 5 o'clock yesterday in the past week, 785 on 477 sales for a 61% sale to new listing ratio. Um, so that'll be interesting, right? Does that continue through? Now that was, that encompasses the Labor Day long weekend. So we had people list this week right after Labor Day, but maybe sales are slower because people are getting back into routines. Kids are back in school, so we'll see how that kind of pans out here over the next few weeks as we roll into September. I can't believe it's September already. The weather does not feel like it today, which we're thankful for. Um, Pendings 423 also lower. Lowest it's been in 5 weeks. Days on market went up to 28 this week. And our actives and pendings 4,642. So we just continue that creep up, right? If you look at 5 weeks ago to now, we're about 300, just under 300 more active listings and pending listings. When we look back at last year, sales were not off by that much, really. 15% off in sales, but 30% up in new listings, 43% up in active listings. Now there's a story to tell here, so I will get to that. So don't, if you're a seller right now, don't be all doom and gloom. There is still a story to tell here because this is just the bulk, the gross stats as we would like to call them. Pendings down 16% and days on market jumped significantly, according to the week that the Calgary Real Estate Board recorded, which ended yesterday at 21%. So, Jaden, some interest rate news this past week with a 25 basis point drop.
Yeah, and honestly, what you would expect from that is that all of the variable interest rates would have come down 25 basis points they haven't all. It's funny that
Yeah,
the some of the lenders made some switches in their discount from prime, which is what so prime has come down 25 points, but the lenders haven't necessarily followed suit, right? So maybe they're going instead of having a 0.95% discount from prime, they've jumped to 0.85 or zero point 0.9 and it's just
right.
off a little bit there. So they're really waiting to see what's going to happen with the market too. It's such a moving target right now because really like people would love to get into variable and I think now is the time to get into variable, but they're still worried about what happened when they were in variable last time and things spiked up, right? But
Yeah,
big announcement on employment in Canada today. Highest unemployment rate in the last 7 years, not including the COVID years, right? And so that's the kinds of things that really will spike the Bank of Canada to look a little bit more closely at what they're going to do the next time that they lower in October here. You know, I think everybody's pretty much 100% priced in another at least 25 basis points. But all of a sudden, economists
hmm
are talking about, oh, some of these numbers coming out. Maybe we'll see zero point 0.5 in October and maybe, a quarter, another zero point 0.5 again in December. So really interesting time with interest rates. We're not seeing the effect of, and people always ask about this. Have fixed interest rates dropped because of what the Bank of Canada did? There's not a direct correlation. It's not one to one,
no,
but there is a correlation between the way that affects the bond market, right? And so we expect interest rates to continue to come down in the kind of the medium term here with the fixed rates as well. but I think that we're going to see the variable come down way quicker than the fixed over the next little bit here.
Right, right. All right, sounds good. Well, and I definitely want your input here as we roll into our monthly recap. So we're doing this a little bit more condensed. There's no community events. We post that kind of separately from time to time on our social media. So this is really real estate focused now. You're going to get 10 minutes. You're going to know, you're going to be able to go to all the parties this weekend, and you're going to be able to spout off all these stats. It's like, you got to talk to Mark Newstater. He's a stats nerd. And being a stats nerd is beneficial for our clients, right? And I love delving into these stats. What story are they really telling? So I think because we have 4 different segments, each segment is telling a slightly different story. So if you just saw the news in the last week, you would say, wow, like prices went up 6.3%, but inventory, boy, it's up 37%, and new listings were up 13%, and sales were down almost 20%. Our months of supply is increasing, which it is. It's up 70% versus last year, because it was like less than a month last year at this time, I believe is the number. And then days on market, went up a little bit from last year, but there's a story to tell. And so I'm doing this a little bit differently. You'll notice the format's a little bit different. I wanted to really break it down segment by segment. Also talk about month over month increase, decrease, things like that. So let's talk about detached first in Calgary. So the first story is detached. We are a detached dominated market. That's always the most amount of sales in any given month, at least since I've been doing this for 8.5 years now. So 9.5% year over year increase. So that's fantastic. And so here's the story for the sellers on the detached side of things. You bought your house even 4 years ago. You're going to make out like a bandit, right? It's how we price it now at the beginning. You can't price a house too low, even with the shift happening right now. You can price it too high. So that is a point, like just under 1% drop from August. So it's about $5,200 drop from July, I should say, in the pricing. So does that continue? Right. So that's why we have Jaden on here to talk about interest rates, because that is part of the story of how the real estate market is rolling. Right. Sales are down 14%. Not too bad, actually, considering everything going on. New listings only up 5% on the detached side of things. We don't have inventory still under $600,000, like generally speaking. That is why sales were down. Right, because we're still in a very, very hot market. I talk to my friend in Vancouver every week. You know how many listings they had? Can you hear me okay, Jaden?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I touched something on my AirPod and it made a weird noise. So they have like 13,000 active listings. If we go back to this slide here, so we had 2,186 sales. They had less than our sales in Vancouver on 13,000 total inventory, right? So it's all relative to other markets in Canada. But let's get back to our Calgary story here. So listings up 5%, inventory up 20% year over year. Now that's not a bad thing, right? So here's the story within the story. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Sellers can still do very, very well. Might you not get multiple offers and unconditional offers? I think those ended, quite honestly, at the end of June, maybe even May. But you're still going to get a very good price for your house, especially if you bought it more than 2, 3, 4 years ago. And then our supply at 1.96 months. That's still under 2 months. Balance starts to happen at 3 months. So if you notice, we tick up maybe a quarter of a month. So if it continues this way, we could be balanced into the new year for sure. And then on the semi-detached side of things, up 9.6% year over year, 1% drop in pricing from August, right? So that's why I want to incorporate the month over month. I think that's much more relevant for a lot of people than year over year gains. Sales are down 12%, new listings up 26, inventory up 38, 1.98 months of supply. So little more balanced than detached, but it is the smallest segment of sales in our city. Row townhouses up 12.5%. Prices down just under 1% month over month. Sales down 15%. New listings up 26. Inventory up 76%. So you would see that number and go, "Oh, it's a buyer's market." Look at the supply, only 1.72 months of supply. So it is not a buyer's market. There are going to be pockets where maybe one complex has 3 or 4 listings and you might have a little choice. As a buyer, you might be able to put in conditions. You should be able to anyway at this point. But that's still under 2 months of supply. That's still very much technically a seller's market. Now, here's my big warning, right? Like if I was on like CNBC or something, it's like warning, warning, warning. If you own an apartment condo, if you're an investor, if you've just, that was the first house you bought 5, 6, 7 years ago, you're thinking about selling, we should have a conversation because this is the one, if you're a seller, this is the segment that would concern me. So yeah, we had a 23% year over year price increase. Pricing was flat from July to August, but sales were down 31%, the largest price drop. And apartments were the most volatile over the last 10 years. So they reached their previous high in 2014, and it basically took 10 years for prices to recover, right? So that's why I'm saying, let's have a conversation now. If you're an investor, that was your first home you bought, okay? Listings up 12%, not bad, new listings. But look at the total inventory, up 52%. That's not so concerning because Row is up 76%. Look at the supply jump, 2.44 months. So that is, that's going to be the closest segment to get to balance. So you understand what I'm saying, right? There's different stories in and amongst each one of the segments here. And then it's going to be different for every community. As we always say, your community might be on fire still, but one at the other end of the city is not. So reach out, right? Like that's why we're here. And we do these real estate reviews. If you're just curious about market value, we do those too. All right. So enough about Calgary. Let's get to Airdrie. So Airdrie, all the surrounding communities, I would say, are faring a little better than Calgary right now. Not that Calgary's in a downswing at all, but there's a little bit of a shift happening. So detached prices up 9%, semi up 11, row up 13, apartments up 21%, 18% more new listings hit the market in August, 16% less sales. But look at that inventory number, 76% more inventory, but months of supply. So last year it was under a month, just like Calgary. So it's 109% increase, right? To 1.8. Still less than Calgary, right? So if you're in Airdrie, you're a seller in Airdrie, you're still generally in a good position as long as you price it right from the beginning. You can't price it too low. You can price it too high. Cochrane actually was fared the best if you're a seller in that market. 681.3, so that's a 9% increase year over year. 8% up semi, 7% up row, 20% up on apartments. New listings up 17%. Sales are only down 4%. Inventory was pretty much flat to last year, and months of supply 1.78. And then finally down in Okotoks, it's it's a much smaller market than either Airdrie or Cochrane. So, the stats are somewhat relative. So let's just be careful how we evaluate that. But 9% up, 10% up, 12% up for row, 15% up for apartments. New listings jumped 29%, but they needed that. There was like nothing for sale in Okotoks over the last couple of years. Sales up 16%, inventory up 39%. But again, we always have to look at this as a big picture. Months of supply, it's the lowest out of any surround. I don't have Strathmore in here, but out of the ones we follow, 1.34 months of supply. That's very extreme seller's market in Okotoks. So, again, if we go back to the, this big picture here, that might paint some doom and gloom. If you're thinking about selling, if you're thinking about buying, there's some pockets of opportunity, as I've been saying now for probably a month on our little snippet, short updates on all of our social medias. But it is not doom and gloom if you're a seller. You just got to be prepared, and we set those expectations for you, when we first start chatting. So that's the important part about that. And there's your market update.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It still went 15 minutes.
Yeah, but it's a lot of information. It's great information, and I think at the end of the day, even if you're a seller, like you and I both would prefer a bit more of a balanced market anyway, right? Because
Sure.
at the end of the day, if you're selling, 90% of the people that you are selling with you are probably buying next, right? And so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you want to give yourself an opportunity to get into that next house as well.
Yeah, and we've had multiple circumstances like that in the last month. One in particular I'm thinking of, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but we made it work for our sellers, and because they bought as well. And you know what? We pushed back on the buyers where we needed a bit of an extension or this or that because we know that there's not as much demand because they were actually downsizing into an apartment condo. So for sure, I know there's not as much demand there right now, right? So I'm going to use that to my advantage when we're working for you on the buying or selling side or both. So we understand the market stats and how to use it both on the selling and buying side. So no, for sure. And I think a little bit more balance is not a bad thing because like you said, most people are buying in this market as well. So just it's a lot less stressful. So that's the
Absolutely.
way we like to do it. So um, interesting to see if we get some more fixed rate adjustments next week. Hey.
Yeah, I anticipate we're going to start seeing some movement, but it's the same thing. This market, the market also drives things as well. So if we had
Yeah.
the banks want to have to get into it, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes when they're seeing these kind of small, slight changes like this, they might want to sit back a little bit and see what happens before they come in with their best rates.
Right. Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great info as always, Jaden. And so this is our monthly wrap up. Join us again next week. We do these weekly updates, but the real big one is this one. So share this with somebody you know that's looking to either sell or get into the market or both. We're always happy to help. And Jaden's contact info we'll put in the comments below. So reach out to him if you have questions. Refinancing right now. Whatever you do, please, for the love of Pete, don't sign a 5-year, don't sign a
Oh,
5-year fixed.
no,
No, don't do it.
absolutely.
Don't do it. Awesome. Thanks, Jaden, and have a great weekend. Enjoy this hot weather. Who knows how long it's going to last? And we'll see you back on our regular social media channels next week.